Colleagues, I'm just recovering from flu. Divesh has already picked it up that my voice is a bit rough. I wish I can talk less and I let you reflect. I've shared with you some few pointers, but we are on Unit 16, Conduct. Did I say Conduct 1? That was wrong. It's Conduct 11. I don't know why I wrote 1 there. Please apologize. And this is listening actively and generatively, but we delve a little bit deeper. We are going a little bit deeper than last time. So any anticipation there? We have once spoken about active listening and generative listening, but now we want to go into the nitty-gritties of it and integrate it into the Khotla. So I've got 2 pointers here that I want us to look in. We all agree that the objective of listening is to understand. And when hosting the show, that is even much more. You must have enjoyed a number of broadcasts this past week. Almost every media house was engaging in some interviews, conversations. I must say I listened to a number of them with great interest. And I have a couple of stars that I picked up from various media houses. I really like some styles there, but I'm not sure whether they are intentional about these do's and don'ts. Any reflection on what you have observed as we were covering or they were covering our election? Who stood out for you?
Um,
Did you pick
uh,
up?
my take on the elections is South Africa excel in a period of chaos.
Mm,
South Africa created chaos and they're gonna excel. Don't doubt them. And don't put them under the radar and don't give them conditions. They're gonna excel. So
mm.
this panic mode or say markets. I don't know where that has come from.
Well, maybe because maybe we don't have some dollars sitting somewhere else, it doesn't make sense to us. But it's one of the interesting indicators to see what they think because it's all about sentiment. It's not even mathematical, just the sentiment. But sometimes the sentiments can change the direction
Mm,
of the matrices,
yes.
especially the exchange. Because remember, people who are investing in exchange rates, there's people who are involved in import exports, and they time when they release payments and when they take investments because it is dependent very much on the prevailing exchange rate. So that's why it's one of the dependable measures. But anyway, um, I think there are many more other indicators we can. But I agree with you. South Africa excel when the chips are down. Yeah. So yeah. So thanks Rapula for reminding us that we have always withstood all the storms in the past, and we've always done very well. And I do believe that we're going to surprise ourselves once again. Great. So that we spoke about listening to understand, and then of course listening for meaning. So we did talk about once you have understood, you try to get the meaning, and then of course make sense of what you hear. And when you have then mastered that, you are able to engage in challenging conversation. I want us to bring in aspects like relevance, um, mode of listening, and then of course those practices that we can use to sharpen these qualities of listening. Um, relevance is quite an interesting one. A number of times we you get reprimanded for bringing points that are not relevant and sometimes relevant to the context or relevant to the topic. But it could be, we can go a little bit deeper and talk about the types of relevance. They talk about direct relevance, indirect or circumstantial relevance, context relevance, comparison relevance, and pointer relevance. So I guess English is an easy language, but very difficult to understand. Relevance for me is relevant, but scientifically, there are apparently type of relevance. You know, the one I know is where you they say you are out of context, meaning that you might have heard the message, but your response is misplaced in terms of the context that informed the discussion. So comparison relevance and pointer relevance. I know that pointer relevance, they say, is the address of or the source of that relevance or where is relevance located. It's too scientific, but maybe some of you have come across this kind of concept. But the one that for me is always speaks to me is the context relevant. Any comments there? I think we touched on it before as well. But what if the context is not shared with you or is not clearly mentioned? How do you create context where the context is not available?
It's not perhaps by asking for clarity so that can be able to create a context in the space.
Yes. So you don't try to be smart and creative. You can ask for somebody to create clarity or to map or to paint the context for you. In coaching, we do use that quite a lot. When somebody has said something, you can say, what informs your view, right? Am I right, Rapui?
Yes, you are right.
Hmm.
Mm. More as why do you think that, why do you think it's this is appropriate?
Exactly.
Mm.
Uh, or somebody says, I think I'm being rated 3 instead of 5 because my manager doesn't like me.
Mm.
If you are a
Mm.
coach, you won't necessarily support that. You will say, what makes you think that way?
Mm.
Or what informs that view?
Mm.
It's quite a very respectful way of engaging rather than say, I think you got it wrong or you are emotional or you are overreacting. But a number of times we do respond in a judgmental way to say you're probably overreacting or but if you can rather than judging and say what informs you or what makes you think that way. Andrew?
And very often, such type of questionnaire or clarity, even if the mentee or a person you're speaking to was very angry and upset, you start providing her or him with a platform to go back and rethink the way he has been thinking things in front of him or in front of him.
Yes, yes. Or you make him investigate a different angle. Because sometimes if you use one particular angle, you don't see somebody coming from a different angle.
And I think as well, Sam, the in relation to the aspect of relevance, I think it's important that we also keep in mind that there's a value chain that the relevance needs to map to, and that value chain is things like you've got a guest, you've got listeners, you've got a channel, and there's a topic or theme that the show is actually addressing. So the relevance, whether it's in the form of direct, indirect, whether it's in terms of the context, or even if in terms of specific points that's being raised, we have to adhere to the value chain in the
Yeah,
place of being relevant.
indeed, indeed. So how are all these related, Divesh? Listening for understanding, for meaning, to make sense, relevant, and to be able to challenge. Is that the value chain you're talking about?
Yes, indeed. And it adds on to many of the other modules which we had discussed in previous shows.
Mm,
Having the tools that we've also discussed and we're unpacking as we go along to be able to um, be cognizant, be aware of the space that you are trying to hold, where if a point is being raised, you should be able to determine instantaneously whether it's relevant, firstly, to the show that's being broadcast, the discussion that's being had, and whether it's relevant to your specific channel that you're using, because the channel has its own dynamics and rules, if I can put it that way. And of course, being able to determine whether it's relevant to the audience that you are actually serving in terms of
mm,
the show that you're having. So it's also aspects which are skills and um, things that you develop over the experience that you gain as you keep going along with the shows, that you take anything that's being said, any point that's being read, and being able to determine um, the relevance that it will have along that value chain that we've been emphasizing, Sam.
mm, mm. Indeed. There's an implied point here which says that if your engagement is irrelevant, you are likely to lose the confidence of your stakeholders. I like that one because sometimes we talk and and we're not questioning ourselves whether we are being relevant to what is being discussed. And I didn't think that it's so serious, but when I read it, it's like, wow. I mean, and I think you probably you could remember the point in time where somebody just came out of nowhere and brought a very irrelevant point, not intentionally so, and you felt so bad that the person was out of line, and then you put yourself in the shoes of that person, how you will feel if you try to make an effort to contribute or to engage with your guest, but you come from a very irrelevant point of view, and people just don't see and understand where are you coming from now. So it does really suggest that for you to be able to be relevant, you have to have that active listening and get the meaning and make sense of what is being discussed, so that when your point of engagement comes, you are guaranteed that you will be relevant or closer to the point. So just to support what Divesh has just said, indeed there's a value chain. They're very interrelated, and but sometimes irrelevant uh, can come out of you not understanding the subject matter. Am I right? Especially if you didn't prepare very well to understand what the topic's are about, or you didn't understand the guidelines of your platform. But I like the relevance. I don't know what the other meaning, what's the other word for relevance. Is that alignment, or is it in tune? What will you say?
Significance, applicability could be also synonymous with relevance to the point, but also
Mm,
to the last aspect that you raised, Sam, the value chain and lack of preparation could also lead to you bringing in a guest that is an expert in his field, but may not be in terms of relevance to the topic and theme that you wanted to host. So you could even plan in an inappropriate way and have the wrong guest actually coming
Mm,
into the show. It could also be the wrong guest because he's not relevant to the times that we live in, the aspects that's
mm,
happening in society. It could
mm,
also be he's not relevant in the space of who the audience you are targeting. It could be the wrong guest, and hence the aspects that you've raised in terms of different forms of relevance come into
yeah,
play,
yeah.
where you could be having a discussion and the point being raised might be irrelevant. You
Mm,
could have a comparison in terms of different points, and that's where you lose your relevance. So
yeah.
indeed, planning is a key. I mean, we keep stressing it in each one of the modules. It's actually a very key fundamental practice that must be inculcated in our nature, and it must go across all the different modules. So it's very
Mm,
key, and it's something which we also mentioned in previous shows, that it's something that should become a part of your nature, Sam.
mm, indeed. And thanks for bringing that. I mean, the generational gaps, but also the other point that you just brought up, not directly, is if you are not, I'm not going to say well read, because that's a more specialization. But if you are not in touch with and I think there's a module we're going to talk about it later in the series, is the mastery of the media. If you are not in touch with the trends and the current, you could actually become irrelevant in a discussion because the current news do sometimes shade the themes that you are engaging in. I mean, just like the way we started the show, the current theme is it's not even the elections anymore. It is the establishment of the coalition government, and then the interesting thing is what are the reactions of the various stakeholders to what is going on in South Africa, globally and locally. And if you are in the current affairs and you are anchoring conversations that are dealing with the current affairs, you could be actually irrelevant because of the times. And sometimes I do feel sorry for the current affairs kind of anchors as it's happening currently because there is so much news happening every second, and you could be regarded as being irrelevant because that thing has already moved on. It was a last hour issue. It has developed into something else, and you have not been in touch because you took your eye off. Those who are invested in your current of flow, they might find you to be irrelevant. And somebody was saying social media makes it even more difficult because if you are in the current affairs, it's important that before you start your show, that you know what is trending and why so and so or this particular topic is trending. Huge challenge there. So indirect relevance, and you tell me please if I got it wrong. For me, indirect relevance is we just had the election in South Africa. India has just completed theirs, and Mexico has just completed theirs. So indirect relevance is that Mexico is going to, for the first time, going to inaugurate a woman president. That is not directly to ours, but it's indirectly that topic of the first women president going to be inaugurated in Mexico is very much indirectly relevant to what we are currently involved with in South Africa. That is a type of when we say something is indirectly relevant, is basically that it's not directly hitting there, but because of of it. They are all the outcome of the election. Therefore, they are indirectly relevant. So you could have a very interesting conversation with somebody from Mexico just because of that point. I hope that explains it.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's a very appropriate example that you made. Because it just dropped into my mind in terms of when you say indirect relevance. But yes, I do. Make connection now to the example that you just made. That obviously when we're talking in terms of relevance, that it could be where one is connecting one topic to the other. So yes, the example that you made is more in terms of the topic of the elections in this country and those that have just, and the countries that have just completed theirs. So those ones are like directly relevant. But however, you can then adding this issue of Mexico, it's connecting another topic, which is not exactly the same as this one, but they have the connectivity in terms of making the relevance more useful to consider this second topic, because the issue of a president is an outcome of the voting that would have happened, prior to that. So the end to a means make the connection possible, and that is where the indirect relevance basically come into. I think that's a very appropriate example that you have made. It makes it much easier to understand.
Yeah. A lot of things become very easy to understand when you use examples, and that's quite helpful. I mean, if you then take, instead of using indirect, use circumstantial relevance. That makes sense now that that you can use it in that context. These are the circumstances of elections, and they make them relevant to what was. And if you are sitting in an interview or conversation with somebody who's a specialist, it will animate the people, and you could actually end up bringing that topic and sitting and say, wow, it's so interesting that in Mexico they're talking about the first woman president. How about South Africa? We have so many women politicians, but we still haven't had a woman president. Now you animate the topic, and that actually makes contextual relevance. Or you can bring a comparison relevance where you say, in South Africa we have got a constitutional democracy, meanwhile in the US we've got presidential democracy. And then I think India, I'm not sure, Dinesh, let me know if I'm right. In India, we've got parliamentary, is it parliamentary democracy or is it presidential as well? So anyway, either way, but so to make things a little bit more, sorry, I keep on going to politics because you know how many countries are having elections this year? This is the year of elections, by the way. So comparison relevance is when you compare, as I give an example now, parliamentary democracy versus constitutional democracy, and then of course constituency-based democracy, whatever. So interplay of those kind of things makes you a very versatile host, if I may say so. But it comes with time. It's not something that you say, I'm just going to be there. You must actually condition yourself to become alerted to such examples.
And in addition to that, Sam, it also comes with a practice of listening, and especially being the host, is listen as much as possible. Yes, you can ask for clarification, but let it be the show of asking for clarity rather than you drive the show.
Exactly. Yeah. Actually, that's a very good point you are raising. Actually, Rabula is actually quite very easy when you know too much about the topic that you are anchoring. You will agree
Yes, yes, I'll agree.
because you
Because
end you.
if you know a lot and then you realize that the person you're hosting is missing the point somewhere else, instead of exposing the person, you'd rather ask for clarification. What does it mean when he says this? What does it mean when
Mm,
he says this?
mm, mm, yeah, beautiful. Um, let's come to the next topic is the mindfulness practice. So I think we spoke about this last time to say that while you are cognitively alert, you must also be body wise, be awake. And then I think last time we spoke about what do you do when you're trying to be awake, but your body is not complying. And then we did talk about this. I think the last time we spoke about breathing exercises, tensing your muscles. That is in between happenings, but mindfulness practice is more of a way of being that you learn to practice mindfulness so that you develop a certain tenacity to cope with certain pressures, uh, not only when you are facing it, but just in other words, it's a condition building. It's like going to the gym, exercising. You're conditioning your body to be physically fit. But mindfulness is more of a practice of the mind or even emotion, to be emotionally strong, to be able to deal with the pressures that come with the terrain. I mean, you can imagine. I literally watched some journalists. They never went to bed. I mean, on the 29th morning, they were at various places. In the evening, they were still broadcasting, and the following morning, they were still, especially those who were at the center in Midrand. And I was asking myself, yeah, when they talk about mental strength, this is where now things like mindfulness, practice, meditation, breathing, and so let's let's just reflect a bit. Imagine you were one of those. How do you think they made it? I hope there are no chemicals that they were taking. I assume they were all prepared, and that's why they could give us non-stop news, pound for pound.
Well, from my perspective, it boils down again to planning. They have to be fit, obviously, physically fit in terms of psychologically preparing their day, their evening, the tasks that they want to do. So being prepared for such an eventuality, of course, they're not doing it all the time, but within that period, they would plan how they're going to push the limits in terms of their capabilities, and of course, plan how they're going to um, maintain that level of stamina throughout the process. And also, once they've reached their end goal, how to relax their mind and their body to bring them back to a state of normal calm, Sam.
Yes, even laughing at themselves. Did you see? Quite a lot of them. There's a lot of jokes there, laughing, and you know, it was really good to watch.
Yeah, I mean, we've emphasized in our previous modules that when you're having conversations, it must come across as natural as possible. And of course, laughing at those specific, uh, funny elements that comes into the conversation, being serious
Mm,
at other areas, um, all comes in part and part and parcel of the natural conversation that you want to portray to the
mm,
listeners and the viewers in this instance.
mm. I mean, I like Shehan. I don't know whether you know Shehan, the ENCA guy. He's a very professional and very serious guy. But what I like about him, he does really bring life into these politicians, and I don't know who watches Shehan. I can't pronounce his surname, but I just call him Shehan.
Well, I've caught him a few times where he can really make you feel as if it's just two friends having a conversation, and then he can quickly turn things around and really question you and not put you on the pedestal, which politicians often are. They'll ask you those tough questions, and even if you're going to get some kind of lambasting coming back from the
Mm,
politician or the powerful guest, he'll still be
mm,
brave enough to
mm,
wander down that road to bring certain questions, look for certain difficult answers, which the audience is definitely enjoying and waiting to see what is the response of that powerful guest.
mm,
Mm,
mm.
mm. Yeah, I think Divesh is right. Is Shahan the guy that just cut his hair? I'm just trying to think about him. I don't know. I can't recognize their names, but yeah, I think that person I have seen even, and that's why I remember cut his hair, because
Yeah,
he brought it in the um in the show, as an introduction or as an icebreaker, but he still made it so relevant to what he was going to talk about, where he introduced the issue of, change happens and it
yeah,
might hit you, and you need to be able to respond to it. And he said something like, "Here, I cut my hair. Some of you are asking themselves, is the first time I cut my hair to this short?" And like
yeah,
by the time he was introducing change, we were already accustomed to the fact of him having made the introduction and made it relevant, made his haircut,
yeah,
relevant to what he was going to talk about in terms of the change. And I think
yeah,
that was very brilliant. Yeah.
yeah,
I needed to add on what Divesh said earlier on about the answer that obviously for these people to go on this long was because of the planning. They kind of probably planned well. And I think maybe just to add on that is that in the planning, surely they would have had a like an anticipation of a different outcome, because when you plan with the mindset that the outcome will be like this. When we do this, it will end up looking like this particular outcome. But I
yeah,
think in this planning, they did even more than that. I see them having planned for even a different outcome than what they would have anticipated. So they went there with the mindset of saying something is going to be new. We're going to be hit with a different terrain from what we have in mind, and we don't know what that terrain will be. But however, whatever it will be, we will be ready to deal with it, and we should be able to know where we are tapping in order to deal with the different surprise terrain
mm,
that will come at a point in time. So I think that also assisted them in terms of going for so long, not with so much exhaustion, or still being mindful of what is happening in the process. Because
mm,
I also observed, and we were talking about it here at home, where we were saying these people opened the offices, at 7 o'clock. But we do know that they would have been there probably at 6,
yeah,
preparing and having everything to be at place, so that when they open the doors at 7, they should be able to run and to hit the road running. But
mm,
however, um, that what would have happened right from 7 o'clock and going there are the easy voters or people who were rightfully registered at the right places where they should be. But towards the end, and like in the evening, after 7 o'clock, after 9 o'clock, you're now dealing with people who required even more attention to the fact that it could be someone who had in the morning or during the day went and started a queue somewhere only to find that he was at the wrong place where he was not registered. And then he was kind of advised that you are actually registered into this other point. And by the time he comes to this second point, he stands in another long queue and he ends up maybe voting after 9 o'clock. So that person is not the same as the one who was in the first queue. He is now agitated, he is now all this, and he is now seeing everything wrong and whatever. So by the time he gets to the point where it's his turn to vote, he is now also hitting the officer or the people that are managing the voting system, who are also already exhausted. So the terrain is now very different from how it was in 7 a.m. when their mindfulness was still quite well. So I think for me, the anticipation of a different outcome, it assisted them even in those circumstances that when their minds were still sharp and awake, it was easy people. It's people who were at the right place at the right time, and they were happy that they are voting early in the morning and they are going to have it all done and they still have the whole day to relax. Because it's happening and it's going according to the outcome of those individuals and the outcome of the officers or the people that are the administrators of the voting process. So it's a positive to a positive. But by the time that is after 9 o'clock, when now they are tired, when now they are exhausted, they are now dealing with difficult voters who are now frustrated, who also have been in the queue for too long, or, he had to go to work first and he's been very much anxious onto the fact that, am I going to finish work on time so that I go there before the polls are closed, or whatever that it could have been. So all those are things that one can say in their planning, they probably took that into consideration, so hence I'm just saying that, the example that Divesh said about the fact that they would have done a very proper planning also helps in the mindfulness.
And that goes together with the discipline that it's also the next point that I wanted to look at. Because planning is one thing, but sticking to the plan or trying to execute the plan effectively is a matter of discipline.
Mm.
Yeah. So, any other follow-up comments on the point just discussed? Yeah. So the next point here is the mastery level of facilitation and also the show being the basis for the factory of ideas. Planning is anticipation, but when you are then running the show, the plan must not be a restriction towards creativity, against creativity and innovation. We, a number of times when you watch the show, you don't want to always watch what you are expecting. You're looking for an element of surprise, or you're looking for opportunity to enrich yourself. That's why we keep on tuning on television or listening to shows. So the mastery level of facilitation is what I enjoy, and I'm really watching people doing their thing, you know. And the point we are raising here is that you enter the space as a beginner, and then you mature through development and practice. But what we are saying is it's not enough until you have entered the level of mastery. In other words, and this is what we are trying to do. I mean, we have been undergoing this program since 2020. Now that we do train the trainer, once you reach a level where you can now develop other and produce others, if you follow the old practice of master and learner, when we say you have entered the mastery level of facilitation, that means now you are fluid and you think on your feet and you can actually troubleshoot on the go. And I looked again carefully how the various media houses lined up their best. If you went to SABC, I forgot what channel it is on DSTV, and then you go to News Africa, and then you go to ENCA, then you go to 702, you go to other radio stations. I can bet you everybody that was lined up for this week was all the people that you will safely say they are at the mastery level. You could still tell here and there that you've got other people that they pair them with one another. But even the way they were pairing them, you see, Shahan was more with this lady, I forgot her name. So the way they pair them, you could see that one of them is almost more fluid, is more at the mastery level, and the other one is more of a very good somebody. It's like if you go to I'm not a dancer, but I know very well. I follow dance as a profession. That one dancer makes another dancer good. And the way you pair, you don't always bring mastery to mastery. You bring a mastery pairing with somebody that is going to follow. Maybe it's because I'm putting these notes and researching. I'm becoming aware. So I apologize if I bring examples that don't make sense. But what we are saying is you need to reach the level of mastery. And when you reach the level of mastery, even in coaching, when you reach the mastery level, you no longer really worry about those templates or those coaching models that you always have to mimic. You are spontaneous, you are creative, innovative, and that is only at that level that you can actually start generating knowledge and information in the middle of the show without having even thought about it when you started the show. And you know when you are at the level of mastery or you're halfway there. They say that Real Madrid is at the mastery level. They keep on winning. You can dominate them. When they get their moment, they finish you.
Well,
Yes, you
well,
wanted to comment.
yeah, that last analogy you gave makes me wonder, though, if they're at a level where they win without even knowing that they're winning. But
Yeah.
to your
Uh,
point, Sam, uh,
thanks,
to
thanks for bringing me into line there. It's not. I agree with you. If you are
it,
a master level and you're still struggling, maybe you're not at mastery level.
and to your analogy again, Sam, I think Maradona was at the level where he would win without even knowing he had won. If you recall that goal that he scored in one of the World Cups, where they said
Yeah.
it was the hand of God goal, so he was
Yes.
at that level of mastery. Just as a
Mm,
joke, Sam.
yeah.
But to your point, Sam. Definitely, I fully agree with you, and this is also why we emphasize that the do's and don'ts that we've been sharing, that we will be sharing even more detail about, is very important. You need to know those rules if and lessons and skills that uh, may seem easy at first, but once you unpack them, you realize they're not as easy and simple as you initially thought. And the second aspect that you would deal with is taking those skills and being able to express them into experience, practice
Mhm.
them, learn from them, listen to your own shows. and then pick up where you made mistakes and then improve, and eventually then you will transgress from the different levels that you had outlined and getting to a level of mastery, Sam. It's a
Yeah.
process.
Yeah, and the scary statistics, Divesh, is that you've got to repeat it 10,000 times to get to the mastery level. I actually thought I was not listening. I was in a different world when I listened to the guys who are best consultants. They say even in music, you have to repeat certain tunes 10,000 times for you to reach the mastery level. I mean, that's crazy. So it just shows you that you can't decide to reach mastery level, but you're going to have to do it 10,000 times. I don't know whether who of you have read about that. Apparently, it's the research. I mean, that's craziness.
Sam, you're right. For you to master anything else, they say do small steps at a time. Those steps, as you do it continuously, that's how you start mastering uh, the art of what you're doing.
Mm,
One area which I personally, it's an issue for me, and I'm doing this unconsciously, is when I'm in front speaking. Sometimes I swallow the last words of my sentence.
mm,
So I keep subconsciously when I start, I'll say, remember, remember. And I know one day I'll do it unconsciously and do it perfectly because I know about it.
mm, mm,
Mm.
mm.
So those small
It-
steps helps you to master.
uh,
And
absolutely.
if you're gifted, the mastery becomes much more easier because as you take your gift and practice and you start mastering your gift.
Yeah, yeah. And you remind me of, or we're reminding ourselves here, but I'm remembering the book by John C. Maxwell titled Talent is Not Enough. And he brings this aspect to say, yes, you can be talented, but you're going to have to work very hard and repeat some of these things until you reach the level of mastery. And just to follow the example you are giving, Dadera Muta is on the line. I do some coaching with him and we record and we share. One thing I didn't tell him, I hope he's listening, is for you to transcribe a coaching session, you've got to, if you are a player in either you're a coach, in this case I'm a coach, I always beat myself when I try to transcribe because while the colleague was speaking, I interjected like, beautiful. Now, when you do transcribing and you jump those things, they're going to say you are transcribing of your old video audio is going to fade. Now I'm trying just to follow example you're making. I'm becoming aware the more I do it, and I'm trying to discipline myself not to interject so that it becomes same said, Dadera Muda said. Dadera Muda said, same said. But if Sam keep on interjecting, now you're gonna have to break that into. That's one thing I'm just sharing with you to say. When you are aware of the things that you have to correct, it's quite very painful when you keep on repeating the mistakes and yet you told yourself you you want to improve on. But that is how you get to the level of mastery by just constantly reminding yourself of the refinement that you need to do. And if you don't do that kinds of things, you think you are at your best, but you're still doing things that shouldn't be done. I don't know whether that makes sense
I,
when we talk about mastery level.
I think it does make sense, Sam, but I have a little bit of a different viewpoint to what Rapula was saying. Yes, you do get a handful who have these special gifts and they can traverse the sort of levels of mastery quicker than most. But if we look at masses, everybody needs to listen to the do's and don'ts. Even some who are, as you rightfully said, at a level where they have a talent. If we talk of the digital online mastery focus areas, they would be getting followers, they're getting very popular, they're making money, but they still make mistakes. But
Mm,
because they are popular, people could overlook those mistakes because whatever messaging, whatever content they're producing, because of the gift that they have, they could potentially, look past those mistakes. But for the
mm,
masses who have to travel that journey, they still have a message that they want to share with listeners. They want to share knowledge with listeners, and through this journey that Comets is offering, you'd go through the do's and don'ts. You'd go through the aspects of um, um, practice, uh, learning, improving, um, uh, having your peer review, doing your own review, and go through this journey of attaining the levels of mastery. But to be honest, sometimes that level of mastery could be about knowing what to do and what not to do. But that gift that Rapula mentioned is more about even being able to know what is the magic topic that you want to portray, and being able to take your messaging to a point where you actually can make financial successes out of that. So just wanted to outline that we've got two different parts, but both parts need this aspect of the do's and don'ts and the journey of going from a different level of mastery to a higher level. It's just that the
mm,
journeys might be shorter for those with the gifts than those who just starting out.
mm. So by the time we do unit number 40, we should be closer to mastery, Divesh.
Yes, indeed, but the judgment is still out whether we would be able to show the gift element which Rapula mentioned. We'll definitely be masters, but we might be masters without necessarily showing some kind of following that can back up
Mm,
our
mm,
mastery, or whether there's some commercial successes which we could then use. So there's a
mm.
bit of work to take that mastery and then take it to a commercial success model, Sam.
So we need to introduce practicum.
Yes, indeed. You gotta have to take that. That
Oh,
depends, of course, if a person wants to travel. It's another journey that you must decide you want to go on to or not, because you might just get somebody who wants to uh, share his knowledge and have followers who listen to his knowledge, but not necessarily make it a commercial venture. But if he
mm,
does, then yes, indeed, that practical
mm,
work aids in both those two different journeys, Sam.
mm. But we can become masters in transition transferring this knowledge on the do's and don'ts as hence train the trainer.
Yes, and that is one of the journeys that we are traveling on, Sam, as Kometsa.
Mm, yeah, great. So here under mastery level of facilitation is stated that by creating an engaging environment, you bring out the best in the guest. You intend to extract as much value as possible from your guest. A good anchor will make the guests discover themselves and reach performance levels they have never anticipated. That is the mastery level of facilitation as the host or anchor of the show. There you are. Those are your metrics or key performance indicators. If you get the best out of your guest, you are a master. But you have just distinguished the difference between someone who's a master in knowing the do's and don'ts and someone who's actually applied them and it's getting commercial value and it's got a lot of following, that's another level of mastery. And that's the mastery of application for commercial value. But there, we can have a mastery of application in terms of teaching and facilitating the learning of the do's and don'ts. So we are covered there.
Yes, and I would also say that the level of affirmation that we can pass on to our guests, ourselves, as well as that entire value chain, that's also a level of mastery that we can attain where your experts come in as a guest but leaves feeling more as if he's contributed to something. He feels better about it. Our audience should feel better about having joined our show, listened, gained knowledge, and being able to even debate or discuss what was on the show with other people in their lives, Sam. So for me, that will also be another metric of
Mm,
mastery.
mm, mm. Wow, it's amazing how starting with the active listening and generative listening, we actually now discussing the fruits of that foundation. So we start that the basic is listen generatively, actively, host the show, but the fruit of it is that you must be at the mastery level. You must get the best out of the people you are engaging with, and your show must become the factory of ideas. And I think Divesh, you have just mentioned that the do's and don'ts are the means to that end. Because it's like giving a learning to drive a car. You first have to do your learners, and then once you've got your learners, you get into the car and you know the rules, and therefore you can actually produce effective driving experience.
Yes, Sam. That is Sam. I just wanted to add also in terms of like what you just said in terms of active listening and like how we structured the module and also linking it to the mastery level of facilitation and specifically to bring out the best in people. So I believe that if you are able to listen to people and you're able to empathize with people and you are able to understand what they are saying, it can be actually much easier to be able to master the level of facilitating and bringing the best out of a person. For example, if you just maybe listen to someone, maybe like a sport person, let's say Ronaldo. I wanted to also bring the topic about Ronaldo and Messi talent and skill, but just bringing them, like, for example, Ronaldo, and you listen to him and understanding how he puts much effort in terms of preparing and how much he works hard in order to be maybe at the level where he is. It brings you can, if you listen to him attentively, you can be able to even bring more of the best out of him, or maybe understand that what he does, what type of exercises he does, and stuff like that. But
Mhm.
I feel like if you are listening to him attentively, you would be able to bring maybe some of the things that are best from just listening to him.
Mm.
Uh,
Mm.
King, yeah.
Indeed, he is known apparently for being the first to arrive at the sports field and then to be the last to leave. And he will be repeating several of those drills, thousands, and that's why I think he followed that principle of 10,000 times before you master it. And I think Beckham also used to do that. Tiger Woods apparently is known for that as well. So all of them actually they are confirming. So basically we are saying that even ourselves on this journey, we need to understand that it's gonna take a number of times
Mm.
hosting and anchoring shows for us to reach the level of mastery. And when you reach that level of mastery, then you do what Divesh is saying. You have to win without knowing that you are winning. Have I got that right, Divesh?
Yes, Sam. I think some aspect of that, if we look at the analogy, would be affirmations that they do receive, where they get these play of the year where they may not be expecting it, so
Yeah,
somebody else might affirm them by giving them that. um, other scenario in that space is someone who's already expecting it but doesn't get it, and then is very disappointed and things like that, so he doesn't get that affirmation. So I think in the analogy there is elements where you could be at a level where you are really good and you're unaware of how good you are through those affirmations, Sam.
yeah, yeah, indeed. Indeed, that's a very good point. And we did touch on affirmations. So sometimes you think affirmations are just, they are not really making a huge difference. Actually, acknowledging people and giving people awards is actually making them even work harder than before. And by so doing, they definitely reach that level where they are at the top of their game. So there's always about intention. There's always a reason behind. And sometimes we don't. I guess we don't explain these things very well. I'm glad you bring in the awards into the picture. Sometimes we think, it's just an annual thing. At the end of every year, we give awards. But actually, what you are saying, Divesh, is the underlying reason why people are given awards is to affirm them and encourage them to even do more. And of course, some of the awards are life changing in the sense that they come with financial packs. But the bigger meaning to it is the affirmation for people trying their best and achieving more. And we want them to achieving more, even allow people to compete on it, and that then affirms even much more people. So that brings us to the end. I'm really excited to bring this new additional topic, attention management. And this is actually the module that from a business academy that we are mapping with this unit, where they talk about attention being there to increase the ability to focus and can be done at the individual and organization level. And they talk about various kinds of attention: intentional attention, responsive attention, interrupted and unproductive attention. So you hear people saying that you must be focused. For you to be able to execute very well, you need to be fully present, be focused. But I like the concept of being intentional. Exactly the point that Rapula was mentioning, that when you pick up something that you are not happy with, you need to focus on rectifying it. And that is actually the purpose of the topic of attention management. And then you hear people say, for you to execute your plan very well, you need to pay attention to details. Because it's one thing to plan, to execute very well, and then in the middle of the implementation, you take your eyes off the ball and then you miss what you intended to achieve. So the show can also be like that. One slip moment, you take your eyes off the ball, you miss the target. And I guess that is some form of a habit that one can actually introduce. So yeah, so attention can be achieved also through meditation, mindfulness, sleeping well, planning well, eating well, everything functioning well, and therefore your level of attention becomes sharp. I mean, if you look at Formula One drivers, they tell you straight that that's a very dangerous sport. You take your eyes off the ball, you can be in trouble. And the level of attention in that sport is incredible. That's why they say that is maybe Alonso is one of the few. Is it Alonso or this Finnish guy who's the oldest at 38? He's very exceptional. Otherwise, at 35, the Formula One drivers they are made to retire because the level of attention is no longer as sharp as before, and they can be a danger to themselves. So attention is a very key competency that we need to develop as well. It goes together with being fully present and actively listening. Now, our level of attention can be disturbed by many things. Maybe let's reflect on that. What can take our attention from the things that we treasure so much and we want to perfect them, and yet we still don't get them? What is the interruption there? What are the sources of interruption and disturbances?
I would say social media maybe can be something that can, for example, maybe just a mere employee trying to get a job done or a task done, or even a business, you want to get some business done, but because of lack of discipline, social media can be one of the things that can interrupt maybe your plans, or in order for you to achieve something quick. Stuff like also lack of discipline, it's one of the things that is also can interrupt, or create barrier between you not being able to pay attention to goals.
Mm.
Yeah, and also just maybe crisis are also one of the things that can hinder you from achieving what you want to achieve. Just like, for example, what is happening in Eastern Cape.
Yeah,
But these are just strategic things that are beyond your control.
yeah, yeah, exactly. That's why those four zones are quite very interesting. I mean, the intentional one is what you spoke to just now. When working intentionally, people plan strategically and prioritize their activities. There are just so many things that can disrupt you. Like in winter, if for instance, you like warm and it's too cold for you to pay attention, or you are not disciplined to persevere, you stop and go to bed. And tomorrow you are writing exam, umpile. So you are not intentional in terms of your attention. You are distracted. So that speaks to discipline. And then secondly, the responsive. People are responding to the world around them in this area. So things happen around you and you don't recognize them. That then you are not being responsive, right? A guest raise a point and you don't pick it up and follow through. You are not being responsive. And then the third point, the one you spoke to now by social media, for it, you are interrupted. People spend too much time answering messages and handling situations that interrupt their work, or people not prioritizing according to their level of importance. You prioritize by doing what you like most rather than doing what is important. That is also an interruption to attention. And lastly, unproductive work. This occurs when people waste time at work. Unless you are on a scheduled break, checking Facebook and chatting is unproductive. So those are the four zones of attention management: intentional, responsive, interrupted, unproductive. Any comments there? I mean, and as Divesh always say, these things apply to other areas of life. We're just bringing them into where you are hosting the show, planning, executing, and reviewing. But it can apply to anywhere else, as Divesh always say.
So I just wanted to ask, in terms of things maybe that are unplanned, like crisis, where can we fit them in this scenario? For example, maybe you're hosting a show, maybe we have maybe technical issue, or for example, we have load shedding.
Mm,
Uh,
mm.
where can they be maybe fitted in? I don't know.
Zone number two, responsive. You need to be responsive to what is happening.
Okay.
And then you will probably ask for a break and play a music, and then you attend to it. Because that's the outcome of being interrupted. But if you are interrupted by a crisis, that doesn't make you unattentive. That is an interruption. But if you are interrupted by you being attracted to, let's say, for instance, you're going to write exam next week, Chiefs and Pirates is playing, you decide to go to the stadium. That is not a crisis.
Yes.
Your attention management is really discipline in that regard is gone. It doesn't exist. Or you have a tender to go in tomorrow, 10 o'clock, Rapula, and then it's 12 o'clock. You haven't done it, and you decide that you know what, I'm really tired. I'm going to sleep, and you don't wake up, and then you miss the tender deadline.
Mhm. Okay.
We're just bringing more scenarios, but it can happen. You're supposed to host a show, and you're supposed to brief a guest today before the show tomorrow, and you don't do that because you are not attending. And then you come into the show ill prepared. There's not going to be a quality show.
And I think as well, over the course of the program which I graduated from, we had instances where even the guest just didn't show up, and in that
Yeah.
situation we sometimes had an alternate guest which was also prepared and
Yeah.
available, or
Yeah.
in that situation we also had where as the host you also just continue together with the co-host to have
Mm.
that conversation without the guests, so holding the space because of the crisis that came about. But with regards to my own experiences, Sam, when we did the VUT show, we had planned
Mm.
everything out properly, juggling with regards to other commitments at the time. Found a nice spot which was supposed to be quiet. And then once the show kicks in, somebody else decides to come to that spot and become disruptive because they see you
Yeah.
doing something, and they
Yeah.
want to be, as they say in Afrikaans, asperus.
Yeah.
They want to be sort of jealous,
Mm.
and
Mm.
we had to keep composure on the one hand, try and keep the show going, and I had to also struggle personally to manage my frustration and
Mm.
still keep my eye on the ball in terms of where we were taking the conversation, um, what I had planned to discuss with the guest, and the like. But these things, as you mentioned, they happen, and
Yeah.
if you plan, you do the do's and don'ts, you practice the do's and don'ts
Mm.
constantly, you would be able to manage. I mean, there's been situations where, worst case,
Mm.
the platform's not available, whether it's electricity or any other situation. Then you have to just do what you have to do. You postpone the show.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you'd have these instances where, uh, even though you have a solution,
Mm.
it may not be a good solution. It might not be a desirable solution, but it's there nonetheless. So you have to plan as well in terms of risks that could materialize. And then if they do materialize, you put those plans into action.
Yeah. Exactly. That's why responsiveness as a subset of attention is. I like it because it says you are aware of what is going on and you do the best you can do. In other words, that's why it's called attention management. So you experience the situation and you manage the situation. I mean, let's take for instance, as the Umpile was giving the example. I mean, it's an election time. All the journalists are out in the field reporting on elections, and then we get a storm, a disaster in the Eastern Cape, and then all of a sudden those guys turn around and they have to now to multitask or double. I don't know how to call it. They are on the ground, and then they all of a sudden they are in the inside the flow flood and reporting on the emergencies. And when that is over, they go back and then continue. So that is being responsive to the situation. Sorry. And that is really all what this is about is being attentive, being actively plugged, being aware, and not being absent. Basically, that's what it's at. And then, of course, when emergencies happen, do the best you can do. And I think that is that brings me to the last one here, and we will continue tomorrow on it. The types of attention that are there: focused attention, sustained attention, selective attention, and alternating attention. I think we have all have come across this. These are very common type of behaviors that you find in people. You know, focused attention. It's like you become single-minded about doing what is more important among the rest. Sorry, among the rest of everything else. Sustained attention means now staying power, and we spoke about this throughout the whole week. There was a sustained attention to report on the election. And then you can have selective attention. And sometimes people say they always blame others, and you listen selectively. And that could be negative as well. But it can be, apologies, it can be very helpful. For instance, I live outside the airport, and when I came here in the earlier years, I would hear every plane landing and every plane taking off. Today, I'm able to selectively ignore it. So that is the skill that you learn intentionally. My apologies, my voice is feeling in. Let me uh, allow you to reflect on that and at the same time check out because it's past already now.
Just to your last point, your examples that you shared, Sam. I used to live next to a train station, and as you'd also said that it was annoying at first, but it
Mm.
came to a point where I didn't even need to look at the watch. I
Yeah.
knew the time based on what train was going past.
Yeah.
Just to also check out from my side, Sam. Important to recognize there's a value chain. You got to listen to a critical level that you can pick up various contexts, various levels of relevance, and take what you're listening and process it in your mind in a quick enough fashion so that you can react with speed and in an appropriate manner. That's from my side.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Thanks, Divesh. Uh, colleagues, anyone who wants to check out, please feel free.
For me, it was I won't say revisit, but reiterate uh, the context relevance of any aspect which you are in. Always request for clarity to make sure that we are on the same page with a person who's listening to, or a person who's speaking to, or your host in that specific moment. And the second to that was to say, how do you live from being understanding your content's relevance in that aspect, and how do you master the level of facilitation? Key to that, knowing what you're doing is wrong. It's always a challenge to make sure that until you master
Yeah.
that portion, to make sure that you master it, it does it automatically and unconsciously. It just going through. That's what I'm saying. It's my take on for check in or check out in terms of today's session. Thank you.
Beautiful. And that is also my takeaway, Rapula. I like finding out what I'm doing wrong and challenge myself to remember not to do it. But it's very hard because some of it is habits that we pick up on the way. Thank you so much, Nabil.
Yes. Me shortly, I like I like to reflect more on relevance. which you spoke about at the same when you said maybe sometimes you're out of context and you know. So for me, that's something that I picked up. They say even organization most of the time what they do is they want to hire someone who's relevant to the business or who's relevant to the role. So that's what I picked up even maybe in communication or maybe a show. It's important to listen and also to be more relevant in terms of what you say, not to be out of context, but to be in direct relevance or like how you explain with I think with the elections both here in South Africa, India, and Mexico, you have to
Mhm.
not be out of context but be within relevance. So that's something that I picked up, and that was something that was fascinating for me. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thanks very much, Ompile. Who else wants to check out? Maynard, are you connected? I saw you not able to talk. And then I saw Tendani joining, but I think she's on the public platform. Colleagues, thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed this module. We'll continue tomorrow. We're going to focus on those last points on what do they call it? Focus attention, sustained attention, selective attention, and alternating attention. And then we will look into the fruits of applying the Khotla methodology in terms of listening, generatively and actively, and in terms of knowledge management. So yeah, I look forward to that. It's a reminder basically, but the section of attention management, as I indicated, is a business academy course that we mapping it with this unit because we feel it has quite a lot that we can take away. But thank you for your time. Thanks for tolerating me. My flu is really challenging me, but I'm glad we could sustain the conversation up to so far. Thank you so much, colleagues. Have a good one. And tomorrow we are continuing. Divesh and myself and anybody else who can join us is welcome. I'll send the invite.
Thank you. Good night, guys.
Thank you. Get well soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Bye.